Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Monday, November 14th at 1:40 p.m. A little late today. I was busy at work, but this is an important topic. It's a topic that we talk about all the time. It's obviously wealth management, portfolio management, but this is more so the identification of stuff that's meaningful, peering through the madness. And this is really where all of this began. And maybe we didn't realize it back then. Maybe we didn't see we were blinded by the insanity of DeFi summer, the insanity of the bullshit pool twos, and the insanity of debasement and the dilution of dilutive tokenomics, which is the equivalent of share issuance, is basically fucking existing shareholders, screwing existing token holders, and that's something that we clearly see in retrospect, and I definitely saw during as something that was not sustainable, was self-destructive. It's hyperinflationary collapse of a currency, and we've seen the creation of countless currencies and all this monetary policy experimentation. And where did it all start? It all started with the notion of Ethereum and contracts, and ultimately what we've come to see as the Ethereum virtual machine, which is not necessarily just Ethereum. There's many Alt-L1s that have EVM support, and there's obviously the rollups and the L2s that are all EVM functional, and what is the most critical attribute and characteristic of something that can be deployed as a contract? Immutability. You can't change the damn contract. It was maybe a debauchery, a perversion, the original attempts at upgradable contracts with proxies that you could change the target address, and that led to all this insecurity and risk and all this capital loss. And clearly, we're not talking about centralized implementations with databases and various coding languages and servers, so on and so forth. We're talking about the EVM, a distributed network of virtual machines of sorts. And that's the power. That's the power of what was created. You always could go back to the debate of the critical decentralization, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, proof of stake versus proof of work. But there's something very significant about what was created with the Ethereum network, the capacity to execute code on a distributed set of nodes, decentralization not taken into account to the full extent of the what kind of conversation is possible. And you could deploy these contracts to be immutable, critically immutable, such that you would have to turn off the damn power or disrupt the functionality of the entire network for the contracts to not be there. What does that mean? That means that the contracts that are critically immutable will be there in the next cycle, will be there in the cycle after that. There's no taking them away. There's no takesy backsies on a critically immutable deployed contract. That's crazy. That's meaningful, and that's peering through the bullshit. That doesn't mean you can't have very sophisticated projects. You can have a project that is mutable. They're really experimenting and doing very cool things. And probably the most prominent example of that is Frax. They probably have components, part of the deployed contracts that are critically immutable, but it is apparent that there's a lot of control. There are keys. There's a team. So there's it is not a simple contract. It is not a simple protocol. Simple in the quantity of contracts and just, the concentrated set of contracts that are just there and they do what they do without human intervention. And that is the biggest damn innovation of this entire space. Get the fucking human out of the equation. Humans are a problem. Now, it takes a human to write the code, but once the code is written, the code has to prove itself. You see what I'm saying? You got all this bullshit going on. Markets are collapsing. And sure, we could talk about macroeconomic liquidity and including microeconomic liquidity, the amount of stablecoins in the crypto space and how that contributes to depreciative pressures and whatnot. But that's separate and apart from the contracts that have been deployed over the last several years. Few, few are critically immutable. Name the protocols. Throw them in the comments. What are the protocols that are critically immutable that are a concentrated set of contracts that require no human interaction? And of those protocols, which ones are working? Which ones have a decent monetary policy? Which ones are the most interesting, are functional? Interesting in the sense that they provide a useful service. I could say the three that I'm aware of, and it's obviously four: Uniswap, Aave, Curve, Liquidity. You have at it. Is there any more? Now, Uniswap obviously has completely useless tokenomics. It doesn't do anything. It might as well be a security. Doesn't do you what? You vote? That's what a damn stock does. You vote. You got varying degrees of voting rights. It's useless. Aave at this point, same thing. Useless tokenomics. Uh, Liquidity, on the other hand, now separate and apart from debasement and the economic modeling of its tokenomics, you are entitled to stake, which you get liquidations. So there's meaning, significance to owning the tokens. That's meaningful. It's not as lucrative as so many other things, as we're all well aware. But that's meaningful because the contracts are deployed, it's functional, it has an automated liquidation engine, and the system will exist into the future no matter what. That is the biggest innovation of the crypto space, and clearly Curve is the outlier. Curve is the most preeminent example of critical immutability, and it has the most robust tokenomics and a federation built around those tokenomics. It is the prime example of probably the most significant innovation of the crypto space, in my opinion. Not necessarily the most lucrative. We're all aware of that. Didn't go up 100x on the money. It's clearly down in the dumps with everything else. But there's a difference between uh, asymmetric appreciation and the topic that we're talking about. We're talking about the attribute of survivability. What will survive? And that's the critically immutable. And what is the most significant of the critically immutable? That's what I think about. And that doesn't mean I'm going to make the most stupid money. Doesn't mean you're going to outperform. It does mean you have a thesis. It does mean you're sticking to your thesis. That's all it means. And you either stick to your thesis and it makes sense and it's rational and you have conviction in your thesis. It's not about strong hands. It's not about some trivial, shallow, emotional statement of hopes and dreams. No one, you're not going to make money because of hopes and dreams, but you could potentially make money by having conviction and rationality and logic and something that makes sense, a story that's rich and deep. And there's very few things in the crypto space that have transcended the crypto space to the macro land while having significance. But there has been creations in the crypto space that are significant from a macro perspective. And that's the story that I've told over the last 2 years. And that's the story that every damn stream I try and refine to tell better and better. What is peering through the bullshit? What do you see? And this is what I see. There's few protocols, few, that have critical immutability. I'm going to pop it over to the main screen, but I'll say hi. S-Verbs in the house. Paul, a pleasure. Crypto, Jake Tapsy, Kazan, Zoidberg. How do you think U.S. is going to regulate bribing platforms? So we'll talk about that. So here's the kicker. They can't regulate bribing platforms, period, other than via nodes, other than enforcement. So we're talking about like OFAC compliance and how not all the nodes are OFAC compliant. I don't know. I don't know what'll play out in that regard. They could clearly get the Department of Justice involved and say it's illegal to do an activity. They could get the IRS involved that says income from a particular activity is illegal, and there's a variety of different horrible post-apocalyptic scenarios that could emerge where the government tries to take your money. I mean, it's not like it's unprecedented. They took gold. Come on, that was by executive order, mandate, edict, and we could easily see ourselves in that type of scenario. But technologically speaking, I mean, Tornado Cash is still fully accessible. It's critically immutable. So it's not necessarily the case that the narrative that I talk about as my the core of what I appreciate about the crypto markets is the best to outperform, is the best to make the most money possible. But what I will always be with you and myself is consistent. And I must stick to this narrative because it's the only fucking rational narrative that you can see in the entire crypto space that's devoid of degeneracy, that's devoid of trying to suck the capital out of people that are coming into a market after you. You want a number to go up so you could sell because you bought early. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of playing the games. I played the games, did well playing the games. I have no interest in that. And that's why I tell you guys this story repeatedly. Now, don't get me wrong, when we have an exuberant market where new participants that have no idea what the fuck they're doing, they have no clue about money, no clue about risk, they're going to pile in and we'll reap capital gains. We'll reap capital gains together on the stream, just like we did in 2020 and 2021. We did very nicely with Matic, and I will wait for the ascending triangle such that the capital gains are freely given. It's like, here, please. The new people coming into the space, they're basically saying, here, please take my money. And that's what we'll do. This is not a market for that. This is a market for sophisticated technical analysts looking for short setups and squeezes and looking at open interest and all this shit for trend reversal. And I'm like, nope, not me. So I refine the story. I make the story easier to understand. And that's what we do a lot on the stream, obviously. It's a lot of the same content. I apologize for that, but it is what it is. There's no many new protocols. We explore a couple of things here and there. If you're swapping nowadays on mainnet, you're going to be using cow swap. And if you're not, I don't know why. This is an aggregator of aggregators. Takes all the aggregators and aggregates them. This is how you swap. And if you go in cross chain, you're using hash flow. That's it. You don't need to deal with bridges. You don't need to deal with anything. Make it simple. Stop making things difficult. If you could go cross chain, hash flow. If you're going to go on mainnet, cow swap. Done. You don't have to look at what's going on Stargate or multi-chain or whatever. Hot protocol. You're done. You're done. That's it. You're not going to find opportunity putting in excess work. Oh, is it cheaper to do it this way? Oh, is it going to be better yield over here? And that's what we did in 2020, chasing stupid yield. In the legacy finance, traditional finance, there's people chasing yield all over the place, cash and carry trades, trying to eke out an extra percent. You're going to drive yourself mad. So another core part of what I talk about and why I do these streams to simplify so you can have a sustainable way of engaging with markets. You're going to drive yourself mad trying to chase yield. And here's a good example. I'm not calling him out for other than it's a good comment. So Dwayne said, I don't like having to jump around to different sites every couple of months chasing curve yield or being locked for 4 years, but that's just my preference. Now, I'm not being critical. I appreciate that preference. So there's a couple of flaws in the logic or short-sightedness in the logic. You're not locked for 4 years. You don't have a position. If you have a VE curve position, you have a purchase. You own something. You're never going to unlock it because that would make zero fucking sense. You have 100,000 VE curve in 4 years' time. For it's constantly decreasing voting power. It makes no sense. If you're going to lock the position, it's a purchase in perpetuity, and you have a spec bet on that you own a property, right? And people are going to rent the damn votes from you. It's a critically immutable protocol. It is not a lock for 4 years. You made a purchase. You're going to re-up the damn lock every month and a half, whatever. So it's a fallacy. The perspective. It's a flawed perspective. So I'm not putting it down, but it's just not the way to look at the protocol. And this is exactly why most people don't look at the protocol. New actors will not look at the protocol. It only is someone that either sees my content or somehow has come to a similar conclusion. And there's many people that have. Tetranode has a fat VE curve position. It's a purchase. It's not a damn position. No one in their right mind would wait 4 years to unlock it and liquidate it. And to jump around chasing yield, no. Curve yield only comes from curve. If you're renting votes, that's another story. Think about a piece of property, real estate. You're renting to a tenant. If a tenant evacuates or doesn't want to pay the rent, you're going to find another damn tenant. If you want to bump your monthly rent, you might have to evict someone to go get better rent. So it's not yield. The yield on curve comes from protocol transaction volume, period. That's it. You don't have to chase it. It comes to the market. If you're renting votes, you're a landlord. You want to find a good tenant that's going to pay you good for your property. That's the perspective. So I'm not being critical, Dwayne. I have a very different perspective. Property rights. You're a landlord. You are renting. And you happen to get base tax from the system. And it's not a position, it is a purchase. So you're not locked for 4 years. That is irrelevant. That is a red herring, and it's short-sighted. So thank you very much. I appreciate the response. I agree and understand, and hopefully I have clarified a very, very different perspective on what the position is. Um, who else is here? That's how U.S. is going to regulate. One curious view. Your thoughts on stablecoin contracts, blacklisting. This is just as problematic as custodian like FTX. Yeah, so stablecoins are a big deal. I think stablecoins are the biggest narrative in the entire crypto space. I talk about Curve, but the biggest thing is stablecoins. Stablecoins fit into macroeconomic eurodollars, and it's 100 and what 150. It's $145 billion worth of capital liquidity in the crypto space. Now, this is zero relative to global financial liquidity, but conceptually is what's tantalizing. Now, as things change into the future, there's what, 20 trillion, 50 trillion? How many quadrillions of euro dollars are there? What's 50 trillion? 2%? 1%? So the potential for stablecoins is astronomical. Now, it's not going to be Circle's USDC because that's not a euro dollar. That is a fungible, portable bank liability. Typically, when you have a deposit in a bank account, it's a number on a screen. It's a liability. They owe you that in dollars. But what Circle has created is a fungible, portable version of that bank liability. So it's not a euro dollar. Neither is BUSD. Tether is a euro dollar. DAI is a euro dollar. Frax, it's kind of a euro dollar. Frax really fits into its whole nother category. And we're not going to digress this stream into Frax. And obviously, I have a favorable opinion of Frax. Gemini dollars are not euro dollars. MIM is a euro dollar. Liquidity is a euro dollar. Alchemix is a euro dollar. SUSD is very much a euro dollar. So euro dollars facilitate currency expansion. USDC and the other ones, BUSD, Gemini dollars, do not. Those types of stablecoins get currency into the liquidity of the crypto space, but they do not contribute to the expansion, the creation of currency as per double entry accounting. Tether does. MIM does, Liquidity does, Alchemix does. That's the difference. That's the significance, and it is the most extraordinary thing to come from the crypto space is a euro dollar because the entire goddamn global financial system is collapsing because euro dollars are contracting because there's fear everywhere. Leverage is being taken off the table. And what happens when there's less capital in the system? You have a negative sum game. You have the same amount of actors chasing fewer and fewer dollars. And that drives up the price of the dollar. And as the dollar gets more expensive, it makes buying dollars more expensive. So if you got a whole bunch of debt in dollars and your business is in euros and the dollar just went up 20% in the last year, whatever the hell it went up, it is now 20% more expensive to pay your monthly dollar debt. It's like your mortgage rate going up 20%. So that's the significance of the euro dollar contraction. The scarcity of the dollar makes it relatively more expensive thinking in terms of other currencies. So, what are stablecoins denominated in? Dollars. That's hot. They're euro dollars. Has the potential to contribute in a positive way to global systemic liquidity, global systemic dollar liquidity. It's the most profound offering of the crypto space. Now, stuff like Curve fits into my thesis that who controls Forex markets currently? The banks. If you go to HSBC and say, here's $1 million in US, here's $1 million in euros, give me 0.02% for transactions, they wouldn't have a response. They don't have a product. They couldn't do anything for you. They'd probably laugh at you. You can actually do that on Curve. So that's the bottom line. Curve is a business, a disintermediated business. It offers property rights and offers you a capacity to contribute to a forex market that you cannot do, period, in traditional finance. You cannot do it. So that's the profound offering of the crypto space. That's the deal. Tapsy's in the house, Rational Gang, my man. Raul, a pleasure. Dan, Mathis, good morning, Captain. I see a big change coming in energy sector, renewables, lots of capital flow. I bought some stock this morning. I bought some Livent, LTHM. I've had large positions in battery metals for 8 years, to 2016. It's been a wild ride, a lot of bankruptcies, but overall the portfolio is relatively healthy. Cobalt, nickel, graphite, and um, lithium. Cobalt, nickel, graphite, and lithium are the four base materials that go into modern lithium ion batteries. And fun fact, um, when you build billions of dollars of infrastructure, you don't just pivot to a new technology. So you have all these newbies that'll say, "Oh, there'll be a better battery technology." Yeah, of course there's going to be a better battery technology. But what do you do before you introduce the new battery technology? You exhaust the shit out of your infrastructure, your manufacturing infrastructure, and the status quo of the technology. Nothing's happening with lithium ion tech other than it'll get better and better over the next 10 plus years. The four materials. Now, I don't have any insight with regard to what to purchase. I've lost lots of money, plenty of bankruptcies, goddamn Namaska Lithium. But I purchased Livent today because after a variety of owners getting exchanged, Pallinghurst, who did a hostile takeover of Nebraska by driving out the workforce in the local area, ended up selling scumbags. And it turns out Livent, I think, owns 50% of Nemaska Lithium, and that is the biggest, most important lithium hydroxide refinery in the Western Hemisphere, the entire Western Hemisphere outside of China. Now, rare earth metals, critical materials. You can look it up as and national one of those national orgs, geological something. There's a critical materials list of shit that we need to basically operate in a modern world, and the vast majority of it all comes from China. Still, to this day. So that's a long-term bet that clearly involves a shitload of geopolitics, clearly involves global financials, clearly involves corporate bullshit. And if you have a list of 20 companies that you invest in, probably half of them will go bankrupt between now and 2020. But the other 10 could be, all you need is one big winner. And that is what I've done since 2016. And we'll see. So that's a digressive story outside the crypto space, but it just maybe, hopefully, highlights the significance that there's no silver bullet to wealth management. You diversify to a degree. You must concentrate when you have high conviction, and just shit, always be as rational as possible. Finally made it to one of these lives. Matt, a pleasure. Welcome. Caleb, what could happen to Curve Protocol if there was a hard regulatory crackdown? The protocol, nothing. The protocol is immutable. The what can happen is what happened with Tornado Cash, OFAC compliance, but that wouldn't make much sense. You're not dealing with laundering money because Tornado Cash technically is laundering money. Um, so it would be something of a similar nature at a regulatory level that influences persons' capacity to interact with the protocol. So fortunately, and I consider it fortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. Now, I own property I of Curve. I rent votes. I'm a landlord, and I will be here to see what happens. And for me, that's a relief. Um, During 2020, 2021, on the stream, together as a community, we scrambled, chasing yield, trying to figure out what the fuck to do, what to buy, what the hell was going on. And I am relieved with locked positions. It's the contrarian me. Some folks fear, just like what Dwayne was saying in the Twitter comment. He's not a fan of 4 years of locking. For me, it's a relief. It's a purchase. I have no need to figure out what could I buy, what could I do. I have a damn ownership of something done. If I cannot do something about it, I will not get frustrated thinking that I should do something about it. The Serenity Prayer. Google that shit. Live your life by it. This is what gets me through a lot. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This is how you get shit done, boys and girls. I cannot do shit about V curve. I am along for the ride. I cannot change anything that happens with it or what it does. And all it will be into the future is productive as I am a landlord that rents. The courage to change the things I can. There's a liquid part of the portfolio. I can make choices. I have minimized the shit out of the choices that I have to make, Anything that I cannot change, I do not think much about. And the wisdom to know the difference. Segregate the damn portfolio into components so it's manageable emotionally. You're not overwhelmed. You have shit that you can take care of, and you have other stuff that you can't do anything about. And for me, the most satisfying part of the portfolio is the stuff that I can do nothing about. I'm not indifferent about it, but it's going to be what it's going to be. Let's look at a couple of charts as we're talking. A lot of comments today. Let's see if I can catch up. Swanson, fire. Good day, Captain Noah. Pleasure, Sammy. Curious about what we define as immutable, because all these protocols can be modified in some way. Uh, no, Curve's emergency DAO does not. Uh, that's about gauge emissions. So that's not about the contract of the capacity for the protocol to have LP positions and operate as a Forex exchange. That's redundant. Forex exchange can operate uh, offering Forex. Short squeeze today? I don't know. Maybe drive you nuts. Oh, I have the LTHM chart up. I don't know what this looks like, but it's basically straight up. ES, if this thing hits the 10 SMA on the monthly, I'll be surprised. Uh, but how the hell is this going to hit the TWAP? And how the hell are we going to have a bullish environment? It doesn't make any sense. Albeit liquidity is up, as you can see, but it's trivially up. Fred M2. Let's look at one thing over here. Take a look at M2 money supply, which has barely contracted at all. How about that? So this does contribute to a thesis that why would things be depreciating at all if available circulating synthetic currency is not significantly decreasing? But then you go over to M0, which is base money in the U.S., monetary base. You do see a significant reduction in base money, which is interesting considering M2 could signify that there is an increase in synthetic currency in circulation. Or maybe the synthetic currency in circulation hasn't caught up to the contraction of base money available. This is an extraordinary chart, by the way, boys and girls. Everyone talks about the debasement of the currency. No, there's 5.4 trillion dollars on the planet. That's it. And there's been a significant reduction in the amount of currency in the planet. It's not trivial. We were at 6.4 down to 5.4. There's been $1 trillion reduction in the amount of currency on the planet since December 2021. That's a wild thought. So what everyone complains about, and they talk about this whole decentralization and how Bitcoin is outside money and the whole Bitcoin narrative, it's all bullshit. What's significant is critical immutability. And with regard to Bitcoin, that's critically immutable monetary policy. It's deterministic software. It's going to operate how it's going to operate, no matter how, or no matter what a human being wants to happen. That's the difference. This is the epitome of get rid of the Fed. This is the epitome of an organic market. And it's the epitome of what Ethereum does better than Bitcoin, because Ethereum is a net deflationary currency for quite some time, the last couple of days since FTX collapsed, and has experienced a collapse, a disinflationary collapse of astronomical proportions. Look at this shit. This is crazy. This looks like M0, US M0, and relatively this is an extremely tight monetary policy. So objectively, this currency should do significantly better than countless foreign currencies from sovereign nations around the planet. This is a tight monetary policy that is deflating alongside base U.S. money. Pretty crazy when you think about it. Gazika, hope you're good. Gonna watch a replay later. It'll be here. You know the deal. Greetings from the Netherlands. A pleasure, a pleasure. Emergency pause is pretty much all you can do. Yeah, but that's emergency pause just regard to Dow with regard to Dow emissions. I don't think you could affect the capacity for an LP to actually operate. What do you think about Uniswap LP between no interest whatsoever? Uniswap LPs will lose you money, period. That's empirically shown mathematically at this point. There's plenty of reason to be an LP if you have, $100 million, and there's a variety of reasons why even a lot money losing operation kind of makes sense. Um, and buy the dip, and then you sell the rip, and you make the transaction fees along the way, but you're not going to make significant amount of capital, uh, and it's not really something I consider for small actors. The whole story changes when you're a large actor. I mean, when you have 100 mil, Bitcoin makes sense because you can park away $90 million of it, and who gives a shit? And you could easily live your life on $10 million at 5% interest. You're making a $500,000 a year from 1 year U.S. securities. The whole narrative changes when you're ultra wealthy. When you're a middle class citizen like myself and so many others, it's not Bitcoin. You're not going to make money with Bitcoin. And the whole preserve wealth is not applicable to U.S. persons because we operate in a dollar denominated world, albeit it's applicable to the impoverished, the hyperinflationary, oppressed person. That's about it. The middle class has one avenue for success and betterment of one's life, and that is ownership of enterprise. That's what we have here in the crypto space that has done well for so many people, the ownership of meaningful enterprise that pays you. Not like DYDX, which is a bunch of bullshit. Protocols that have disintermediated cash flow. You own enterprise. And if it's critically immutable and you can't sell it, you own property. And that's the current position and why I appreciate it so much. Change gets better fill than hash flow. Sure, I don't go cross chain though. For me, I just operate on mainnet. So for me, cow swap is the bee's knees. But I appreciate what you're talking about, Crypto Jake. Emergency pause also means a reallocation of incentives. In my opinion, you get Curve and other immutable contracts registries by putting pressure on the folks who control those multi-sigs. Yeah, there's probably attack vectors, but there's nothing that'll disrupt uh, um, transaction fee revenue and the disintermediation of that capital flow. So that's what I find significant. Hash flow, Dan, is hashflow.com. That's the deal. This VE curve purchase reminds me of my Gala node purchase. Can never sell. You can't sell it. Now, clearly, you don't want all your money in something you can't sell. You need capital to live and pay bills, and you need optionality so you can buy things if there's an opportunity. So you have to be smart about shit. Um, Quick thought, why aren't other big Curve eco players locking more Curve? I don't know. There's one player that I find very interesting is Tetranode. That boy is in a position to he owns a significant amount of critically immutable infrastructure. He has a liquidity position that's relatively small, big on convex and Curve, never dabbled in Aura and Balancer. So if anything, I align with very much with the way he probably thinks. Yeah, I worry about regs too. The beauty of it is, once you have ownership of some current property, you can't do shit about it. You can't sell it. So I will be here to tell everyone what happens with regard to regulations. What will Frax do if Circle Star is controlling USDC more? So this is part of risk, and this is why it is only a small portion of the portfolio with regard to their capacity to produce incredibly innovative products and services. It is probably the most interesting in the protocol in the entire crypto space with what they've done with the Curve Federation and the treasury of CVX, CRV, and CVX that they own. They are the predominant, the leader of the Curve Federation. So that's quite interesting to say the least. And it happens to be another protocol that Tetranode is closely aligned with. What will Frax do? I got that one. Good evening. A pleasure as soon. Good evening. Good morning. What's good, everyone? Hi, Noah. I'm new investor in crypto space. I want to start investing in stablecoin. The best pool or farm? Yeah, I wouldn't do anything in this market. In this market, I would start to understand um, like a regulated stablecoin. There's no investment in this market that's going to outperform or make significant money. The liquidity is being drained everywhere. And what you have is a negative sum game where people are taking money from other people. So the appropriate thing to do for new actors, if you're listening to my content, I'm going to say is education, and is to start to reframe your mentality to operate in the digital world. So USDC, it's regulated. I mean, obviously, there's a whole argument to be said about uh, risks associated with it, but I would say GUSD is quite interesting. Um, I have a higher opinion of GUSD as compared to USDC. There's meaningfulness in understanding liquidity, LUSD, and how that value comes to be and what they're building. You probably want to understand all the CDPs from a technology perspective and how they are a digital euro dollar. MakerDAO's DAI, Abracadabra's MIM, uh, CheDAO's MAI, um, and when Curve launches, Curve USD, when GNO launches from Aave, that's a big deal. Those are euro dollars. Those will be euro dollars by definition. So I'm not interested in delta neutral strategies. I'm not interested in making a couple of percent here and there. I'm interested uh, in up only mode returning where we have ascending triangles and you can take capital and just multiply it. And I'm interested in my narrative, my core narrative of property ownership and renting and critical immutability. Because with critically immutable property ownership, you're going to be here for whatever the future has in store for us. And that's a beautiful thing. So there's nothing like to start doing right now. I would probably, here's an interesting way to start USDC and Juno Finance. Just having a capacity to self custody USDC, which are dollars, and for all practical purposes, we could trust that it's going to be there and they're going to be dollars, and transferring USDC to Juno and having a Juno debit card, either virtual or physical, and paying with crypto. Because now you're going to digest the capacity to earn crypto via the various things that we talk about with the associated risk, so on and so forth. But once you earn money in crypto, now you know how to spend that crypto money. Crypto is spendable. You don't need to go to an exchange and sell something to get dollars into a bank account. Juno Finance wraps it all up. And clearly, no one's fucking with crypto.com anymore. But BitPay, that works too. So that is probably the most interesting thing to do in this type of market climate. Not take risk, but understand process, balance sheet process of how you could spend your crypto, which means you don't have a position, which means you own no assets. You have a stablecoin, which you could transfer at times to Juno to make purchases. Django, a pleasure. Raul, do you still have the FXSF position? I do not. That was not a purchase, albeit I do have a time capsule ledger, which is buried very deep in an undisclosed location in the backyard. So I do have a 32 clip buried in the backyard. But that is not part of my investment portfolio. That is personal cash that is buried um, for what it's worth. So I treat my investment capital very differently than personal financials. Um, my investment capital is not currently deployed. All my liquidity is in stablecoins. For what it's worth, whether that's a mistake or not, I don't know. I don't give a shit. I'm not riding this bullshit. Listen, the bottom line is anything that's liquid is going to be ferociously attacked. If it can be sold, it will be sold. If someone can extract capital gains, they're going to do it, especially in a negative sum environment because the total amount of liquidity in the crypto space is going down day by day. It's down 1% in the last 7 days, which basically means every single person in the crypto space is chasing less and less dollars, which means the value of those dollars is going up, which means the value of the assets inversely proportionally is going down. That's the bottom line. That's how money works. Matt, but what incentivizes the LPs? The emissions? Not necessarily. It's also transaction fees. It's also the slippage or the lack thereof. It's also the functionality of stablecoin. I mean, you could put stablecoins on an LP. It's basically going to be Curve, and it will also be Curve USD when it launches that you could leverage your LP positions to create a digital euro dollar. So there's a variety of reasons that are for that's curve I find interesting. Frank Corp, a pleasure. Metal burn, metal bum, metal bum man. Oh man, did you sell your curve or are you buying curve at this point? It's impossible to sell curve when you have ownership of a VECRV position. It's not a position, it's ownership of property. I'm actually tempted to make a purchase, but I've been restraining myself. The liquidity conditions just look like shit. But we're seeing a lot of relative bottoms, but I don't trust yet. I don't trust that this is a bottom. So many things are being held up, and this is a defensive position. This is a position of weakness. This is support, barely holding a support. So this is a position that I find myself wanting to extend patience and restraint and prudence. So I'm trying my best to not make a purchase. I could, given current price, I could bump my overall curve position 25%, which means I could rent 25% more, and it generate 25% more weekly income, which is meaningful. But that's the extent of my temptation. I've thought about smaller positions, 25%, bump it a little bit, but I have not done anything, and I'm going to restrain myself from doing anything most likely. It's just a pleasure, Metal. Cheesecake, I know you aren't looking to allocate money to new projects, but do you have an opinion on an XCAD? Never heard of it. Solidly fork on Arbitrum, and it looks promising. No interest. I have will have a solidly position on mainnet, and obviously Velodrome is on Optimism. I have no interest in that shit. I have an interest in mainnet. The capital's on mainnet. You can play around on the side chains, but you want to know who owns Arbitrum? GMX owns Arbitrum, and this is not a market that I would want to take any risk in. And sure, whatever, something could come of Velodrome and whatever XCAD on Arbitrum. I just I don't need to play with that shit. You play around, $50 just to play around with the software and see what it's like. But you know who's going to innovate the most is going to be this solidly launch on mainnet, where it's like a V2. It's not just fixing the issues. It's like I'm inclined to think they actually made it better. Frankly, the protocols that were involved with the original solidly launch were paid a lot of money on Andre's exit. He paid him a lot of money to get this thing up and running. As much as there's a lot of contention about what he's done, I'm pretty sure he has a very consistent vision about what he wants to do with regard to fixed forex, and solidly is a critical component to that, and it inverts the entire incentive mechanism as compared to status quo LPs and AMMs. Um, so it's quite novel in that regard. So the only one I have interest in is solidly, and I have absolutely zero interest in increasing the position size when the protocol launches. The extent of the position that I will have is what was burnt on Phantom and will be minted for me on mainnet. Obviously, tapioca is something else that's quite interesting as well, but that is a relatively small position, all things considered. This is not a market to take risk in. Don't screw yourself with this kind of market. This is not the up only free money market. I look forward to that as well. That's where you can basically buy some shit that's in an ascending triangle, and bam, you get a 50% breakout and you call it a day. We'll have that market again. It always will be inevitable. Until then, we tell our stories to have a sustainable capital management methodology, a narrative that's more robust than what the average person thinks of, and I stick to that narrative to give me conviction that I have made rational choices. I will see this market in the future because I can't sell things, and I am thankful for that. And I'll end it on serenity now. Don't drive yourself nuts. Thank you all for joining Monday, November 14th, 2:29 p.m. Tell everyone to subscribe. If nobody listens, I can't help them, and I would like to help as many people as possible make rational choices. I wish you all a good day. after party on Discord for the most rational community in the entire crypto space. For those who remain in that forum, I thank you greatly. You are vigorously pursuing the most rational path forward because that's what we do in there. And we'll continue to do it all through the bear market. I will see you again on Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.